Semifinals are always stressful, and this year is no different. Honestly, it's probably the most stressful time of the year for me. I think it is the hardest stage, just getting to the games. And once you get there, you can kind of just exhale, which is kind of where I'm at the moment, not diving right back into training quite yet. But I wanted to share a few of my thoughts and emotions and things that happened throughout the weekend with you all, because I've had a lot of requests for that. So we wanted to make it feel like as much just home as possible. So how else would we do that? We took Milo. That was the first time we've ever taken him and stayed in a hotel. He was absolutely awesome. And it was also just a really nice distraction in between events in the evening when we had that long break and finished at 3 p.m. and didn't start until 12 p.m. the next day. It just helped keep things normal. And he was always just so happy to see us. He had no idea what was going on. He was just excited to see the elevator and to be in a new place and to be looking out the window and being the little nosy neighbor. So having Milo with us was a huge treat this past weekend. From there, we checked in and it's time to get started. So event number 1 is the barbell complex. The lift was 3 cleans, 2 front squats, 1 jerk. I went all squats, of course, because I don't have a ton of power output, and it's easier for me to squat clean all of those movements than try to power clean them. So my goal in practice was to use change plates, 1 pound on each side, to start around 202, but we didn't have change plates. And I knew I needed to score as high as possible on this, so I didn't really want to start at 200, so we just bumped up to 205. Starting with a lift after a taper week is always nerve-wracking because you're like, is my CNS ready? Are my legs there? And as soon as I hit that first 205 lift, I knew it was gonna be good. 210 comes along, and my jerk was, it was okay, could have been better, and then I nailed 215. I was really happy because this is something I have not hit in practice, and my max clean and jerk is 230. So I was able to hit 3 cleans, 2 front squats, and 1 split jerk at 215, which is, I think, about 90-some% of my actual max there. So that set me up a little bit better than the 1 rep max snatch, or at least I thought it was going to. I thought it would be like, if I could hit 215, I'd be, maybe 7th or 8th, and I peeked at the leaderboard and I was 12th. Last year I started at 14th, so I was like, okay, 2 places better, we got this. Then from there, the second event. I felt really strong going into the second event. I felt like we practiced it really well, but little did I know we didn't have a torque tank, and it did not replicate the torque tank. With what we used, did not replicate the torque tank at all. It was a lot of sustained effort that drained my power output. So when I got back to the bike, I felt like I couldn't hold my pace. So there's a couple things that happened in that event that I really didn't feel mentally prepared for. First, when I got on the Echo bike, it didn't start at 0, so I wasn't sure where I was. I should have been looking at RPM. So I felt a little flustered. I think I maybe went out a little bit hotter than I anticipated. The torque tank took a lot more of my energy to push on that first way down, and then I started getting a ton of no reps, like 3 or 4 on a burpee dumbbell deadlift. I eventually had to ask the judge why. He told me I thought I wasn't extended. He told me my chest wasn't hitting the ground, so I'm definitely gonna go back and watch that. So between those 3 things, I was a little bit flustered from the gate, but I did give it my all. And I walked off the floor knowing I gave it my all. I just knew that it was not gonna be good. So heading back to the hotel, I'm exhausted. Day 1, we peaked at the leaderboard and I was like, okay, cool, I started at 12th. I dropped all the way down to 19th, which was much lower than I had ever sat in last year's semifinal. So mentally, I was kind of going through a process where I was like, okay, 48 points up to 5th. Like, you can definitely make that up. You just have to execute the way that you planned. It's possible. But then on the other side, it's like, is it really possible? There's 15 girls or 14 girls ahead of you. Like, you need some help from them as well. And that's out of your control. So it's like this constant back and forth mental battle. So that night I was a little bit quiet. I just kind of hopped into bed, into my EIGHTSLEEP, which we set up in the hotel room to make it feel as much like as home as possible. So I curl up in bed with Milo and Pat, just kind of watching some YouTube, watching the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, because that is a great distraction from CrossFit. If you know what I'm talking about or you're watching it, comment below. Just to kind of try to take my mind off of everything that was going on, where I was sitting, how poorly that first day went. Even though it didn't go that poorly, considering I was pumped about the lift, I couldn't believe how low on the leaderboard I was sitting. A lot of people ask me, what do you eat during competition? When we get done at 8 o'clock at night that first night and we're walking back and it's 8:30 and our adrenaline's high, normally at home I'm going to bed at 8 or 8:30, so trying to keep things as normal as possible. I was fortunate to have Rosie Joe Meals send me all of my food, so I didn't eat out once during this entire weekend, and that's what I eat at home, so I was able to keep the consistency with the same meals. So typically my meal consisted of sweet potatoes, rice, chicken, some sort of veggie, and then before I go to bed, I'd eat the banana protein pancakes with peanut butter and jelly and syrup on top, just because you want to make sure you build up those glycogen stores into competition, because it's really hard for me to eat throughout the day. So at night I was slamming some food. So So I felt really full, really happy, all tucked in. My 8 sleep temperature was cranked all the way down because especially in competition, I tend to get hot a lot at night. So I was able to crank that down so I could focus on getting a good deep night's sleep. As fit as I am, I woke up still super nervous. I couldn't even eat that morning. As I know that I was fit, I know that I was prepared, and honestly, event 3 was the one I was looking forward to the most. I typically like legless rope climbs, but in my head, I kept repeating those no reps. Like, what if I go on a legless rope climb and I miss the beam and I get a no rep and then I ruin this workout that I feel like should be really good for me? So I'm having all of these thoughts, and the one thing that I did change this year that was super helpful is I have Kristen Holta in my corner. Talking to her on Saturday, heading into event 3, just getting the confidence from her that I am fit, I am ready, I am prepared, I think was really helpful. Pat has always had confidence in me. I think that sometimes they believe in me more than I even believe in myself. So having another female with a different perspective who has been at the level that we are at, and I respect so much, having her perspective and just having her confidence in me really helped lift me up after that first day sitting in 19th. So I went out and I executed exactly as we had practiced and exactly as we had planned. And that gave me a big boost confidence-wise. Just feeling good on the floor and smashing my practice time helped me just kind of lift my shoulders and lift my head a little bit like, okay, I'm still in this. And I remember looking at my phone and I had a text message from Kristen saying, and we are back in all caps with the little smiling devil emoji and a tiger, basically saying like, all right, it's time, here we freaking go. So that really fired me up, and Pat, of course, I could hear him screaming all the way down the floor as I was doing the legless, and I knew how to execute. The no reps just left my mind, and all I was focused on is exactly what I had to do. So my goal was to take that momentum into event 4. This is the one I was the most worried about this weekend, which really scared me heading into it considering event 2 went so poorly. I could not afford to have another finish like event 2. And this one was 150 calories on a ski erg, 150 wall balls, 150 GHD handstand push-ups, or GHD sit-ups, not GHD handstand push-up, and 400 foot of handstand walk. That's a lot of volume, and those first 2 movements up front don't exactly favor a smaller, shorter athlete. So I knew our game plan, and I knew that I had to execute as planned, and stepping onto that floor, I felt like I could throw up. The last thing I wanted was to make a little bit of a progress in event 3 and then backtrack in event 4, because at that point I knew I would only have 2 more events to try to really pull myself out. The goal was to finish top 8 or 9, and we ended up with a 6th place finish, which we were freaking ecstatic about. We executed exactly the way as planned. So heading back that night, I walked into the hotel room, Milo was giving me kisses everywhere. I just almost felt like this relief was lifted off, and I started to truly believe in myself the way that Kristen and Pat believed in me. I started to feel like, okay, this is possible. I'm only 17 points out. And I remember back in 2016, going into the final event, I was 24 points out and I made it into the top 5. So I was like, okay, you know, time and time again, don't look at the leaderboard, just do what you have to do and you can make this happen. So more than ever, I focused on just kind of what could I control? And you hear athletes talk about that all the time, but I just had to really go internal. And Pat was trying to give me all these pump up speeches and trying to fire me up. And I think I was just looking at him quietly, just sitting there. And he's like, you're really stressing me out, Chrissy. Like, are you receiving this? Are you understanding what I'm saying? And it turned out to be that I just kind of needed to go internal and kind of needed to process what was going on and to make that decision if I was willing to fight for what I wanted. It became how bad did I want it on Sunday. And I feel like I showed you guys how bad I wanted it. Waking up Sunday morning, I knew that I wasn't in yet, and I knew that I had a big fight in front of me. Considering these workouts, the first one started with a 2,000 meter row, being one of the shortest and probably one of the lighter athletes. That didn't exactly seem like it was gonna bode well for me on paper, and I knew that. I kept trying to remind myself I had my game plan. If I could stick to my game plan, I could sneak out maybe with a top 5, which would hopefully close that gap slightly, and then I could go into that 6th event, just leaving it all on the floor, going full send, I think, like I said in the interview. I was in my head determined to not leave there without a freaking top 5 spot. I'd been in that position last year and I felt like I kind of crumbled a little bit mentally, and this year I was ready for the fight and I was ready to give every ounce of energy and effort with a positive attitude and see where that left me. And I knew if I could do that, I could get into that top 5. It's a constant battle as an athlete, is worried about others when you see them in warm up. I'm like looking around like, oh my gosh, everybody looks like they're moving so fast. But it's this weird calmness when you have your game plan, you know exactly how you want to execute, and it kind of just comes over you when you're on the floor. And if you can stick to that and stop worrying about whatever else is happening, then that's when the pieces really fall into place. And I felt with event 5, I had a fire that I have not had, I don't think, ever. And going out into that 2K row, I knew I was gonna be one of the last ones off the rower. Previously, I've been frantic and I've been trying to catch up, but I stuck to my game plan and I executed exactly as planned, and I was not gonna stop. I wanted all 100 of those points to know that I left everything out on the floor and I did everything that I could to be able to get that win. To be honest, I don't even think I believed I could get the 100 points until I was hitting the chest bar and getting to that second barbell first. At that point, it was like, all right, Christy, step on the gas. We're not losing this lead, and you're gonna fight with everything that you have to maintain this. And that's what I did, and that is still probably one of the most painful rows and workouts that I have ever done. I just remember wanting to celebrate on the finish line because I just won my second event of the weekend, and I had no energy to do that. I just remember looking at Pat and just like smiling and exhale of relief, knowing that I was gonna be closing that point gap. After event 5, I was exhausted. I was hot, I was tired, my legs hurt, but I knew everybody was. Like, there's not one person who got through that workout not feeling exhausted. So we quickly hurried back to the hotel, gave Milo some kisses. I promised Milo I wasn't coming back without that 5th place or higher finish because we were gonna be moving on to the next stages. He gave me a whole bunch of kisses, wished me luck, and I knew it was gonna be a good thing. I was really nervous about event 6 because, again, everyone's like, oh, there's muscle ups, you're gonna do great, but it's a deficit handstand push-up, which previously hasn't been in my wheelhouse, something we've been working very hard on, and then a 150-pound sandbag. I weigh all of 130 to 132 pounds probably, and that sandbag is so hard for me to even get my arms around. I was watching people just rip them off the ground and warm up. Again, reminding myself like, hey, stop looking around. You're gonna stick to your game plan. So stepping on the floor, just knowing like the ticket was on the line is a very weird feeling. It's like you're so ready just to go full send and as hard as you possibly can, but you also don't want to screw up. You don't want to get a no rep. You don't want to miss the sandbag. You don't want to miss your snatches. You want to make sure you pace it so you don't go out too hot and then feel it and just like you can taste it and then you blow up. Like that is always a fear of mine. So again, I had my game plan. I felt confident with my game plan, and what I expected was to be chasing after the first round, but I hit the first 2 things, got to the sandbag and had 1 or 2 reps in before anybody else touched it. And from there, I was like, okay, Chrissy, like let's just keep this pace and maintain. And you know, if you get this first place, you automatically have that ticket to Madison. So just stuck to my game plan and I left it all out on the floor, and I'm happy with the result.
Come here, bud. We did it. Nothing better than coming home to this. Hey, boy. I told him I wasn't coming back without a spot.
What I really want to get across to you guys is that you should never give up. So on the first night, I was really feeling like I was backed up into a corner and I had my back against a wall, but I wasn't going to give up because it's not over until it's actually over. And all of the events have been competed. I know Pat said, hey Christy, we don't do 2 events, we do 6, and there's a reason for that. So always believing in yourself and finding that confidence and trying to shift to focus on the positive can really make a huge difference. And focusing on the things that you can control and wasting less energy on the things you can't control. So making sure that you're just focusing on yourself and promising yourself that you're gonna have a positive attitude and you're gonna work as hard as possible. And if you do that, then you will be happy at the end of the day. I get a lot of questions about what I eat, what I do, anything that I do differently, what do I pack? And honestly, I try to make it as similar there as it is here because I feel really good into a routine. So what that means, as soon as we traveled there, I got out my sidekick mat, which I take with me everywhere to make sure I have like a nice little spot to hang out and have a good recovery spot. And I scrape my muscles, I scrape my quads, I scrape my arms just to get some fresh blood flow. I did that after each workout at the end of the night. I also focus on eating the same thing. So I was fortunate to have Rosie Joe meals, which I eat at home. Just had them sent to Tennessee, so I knew that I was eating chicken, rice, and usually banana protein pancakes with peanut butter and jelly before I go to bed. That way I felt like my stomach was adjusted and I was used to the foods that I was eating, and I wasn't putting something new into my body for the first time, not knowing how I was gonna react. From there, just keep my routine the same. I took a band, I took a kettlebell, and if I wasn't able to do that, I would find one at a gym or in the warm-up area or something like that, doing all of my same warm-ups, all of my same activation routines, and keeping things as similar as possible to what I do at home. We even brought Milo with us for that reason, and because we were able to for this trip. It's just finding the comfort and finding routine can really help you kind of bring down that anxiety when there's something big happening or a big event that's causing some nervousness, some nervous energy, and also some anxiety. From the bottom of my heart, I appreciate all of you following along with my journey. I somehow managed to make it exciting yet again this year. I'm excited it's Memorial Day weekend. I'm gonna take a couple days off. I'm gonna exhale, I'm gonna reflect. I'm just gonna focus on things that I learned, things that I was really happy with, and then take all of that fire into training in this next week. I have some super high expectations for myself, so stay tuned. Thanks again, I truly appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Stepping out flat, body hot like July. Never friend on the inside, all I can say, oh, nah, 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 nah. No compromise, putting up day and night.